Explore place value through tenths and hundredths. Use a place value chart and models to show 7/10. First, let's use a place value chart to show 7/10. Write 7 in the tenths column. Place a 0 in the ones column since 7/10 is a decimal. The place value chart shows 7/10. Now let's use a model to show 7/10. We can use a base 10 model. Shade 7 out of 10 parts on the base 10 model. So the model shows 7/10. Finally, we can write the decimal. The 7 is in the tenths place. The ones place and tenths place are separated by a decimal point. So 7/10 can be written as 0.7. Tenths. Samantha and Rebecca went to 10 horseback riding lessons. 3 of the lessons were outside of the barn. What part of horseback riding lessons was spent outside? First, we need to find the parts. There were 10 horseback riding lessons. 3 of the 10 lessons were spent outside. Next, we need to model the parts. Use a base 10 model to show 3 out of 10. Shade in 3 of the 10 parts. This represents 3 out of 10, or 3/10. The number is read as 3/10 and written as 0.3. So, 3/10 of the horseback riding lessons were outside. Hundredths. Drew has a 100-piece puzzle. There are 4 corner pieces in the puzzle. What part of the puzzle has corner pieces? We know that 4 of the 100 pieces are corners. So using a hundreds grid, shade 4 of 100 parts. Since 4 of the 100 parts are shaded, we can read this number as 4 hundredths. We can write the number as 0.04. So 4 hundredths of the puzzle pieces are corner pieces.
Hi guys, happy Monday. Today we are starting our next chapter for math. We finished one last week, and today we are moving on to the next chapter. Today we are doing lessons 1, 2, and 3. So we are doing 3 lessons today in this video, but lesson 1 models how to do lesson 2 and 3, and they're both super quick and easy. So I think we can handle it. I'm going to give you a quick rough outline of the lesson though, just so you know what to expect. So first we're going to do lesson 1, which is hands-on place value through tenths and hundredths. Then we are going to do a lesson on tenths, and then a lesson on hundredths. And see, they're short, simple, quick. And then you'll have 2 independent practice pages, and then some homework. All right? So it should be nice and quick and easy. If you need to pause and take breaks, please do that. I know 3 lessons is a lot, especially for a Monday. But I really just want to make sure we're packing in as much as we can these last couple weeks so you are ready for 5th grade. All right, so let's jump in with hands-on place value through tenths and hundredths. Up here at the top, let's write in orange today. We've never written in orange before. It says a decimal is a number that uses place value and a decimal point to show part of a whole. All right, so we are working with decimals. Look at our chart over here, our place value chart. It looks a little different than the place value charts we've worked with before. This one starts with 1 being the highest, and then it goes tenths, hundredths. Notice the tenths. That means it's breaking it up into tenths and hundredths, and it's moving this way. It's moving away from the ones. Normally we'd have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. This time we're working backwards, and each part is part of 10 or part of 100. Notice the decimal there's a decimal between the ones and the tenths place. All right, those are very important things to remember as we move into this lesson. So let's jump in with Build It. Kendra has $1, 3 dimes, and 5 pennies. Model this amount using a place value chart. You know that $1 is equal to how many cents? If I have $1, it is equal to 100 cents. $1 is one whole. It's a whole piece. So we write 1 in the ones place. $1. A dime is 1/10 equal parts of a dollar. So if I had a dime, that's 1/10 of a dollar, and I would need 10 dimes to make a whole dollar. So it's part of a whole. It's 10 pieces to make one whole. One of 10 equal parts is 1/10. So 1 dime is 1/10 or 1/10 of a dollar. You can write it in words, 1/10, or as a fraction, 1/10. Kendra has how many dimes? It tells us at the top that she has 3 dimes. So we write a 3 in the tens place. 1 penny is 1/100 equal parts of a dollar. So I need 100 pennies to make a dollar. Each penny is 1/100th. If I put all 100 together, I have one whole. 1 of 100 equals 1 part, 100th. So 1 penny is 100th or 100th of a dollar. There are 2 ways. You can write it in words or as a fraction. Kendra has 5 pennies. So we write a 5 in the hundredths place. If I was going to write 3 dimes in the tenths place, it would be 3 tenths and 5 hundredths. All right? The decimal that represents the amount of money Kendra has in dollars is $1.35. That decimal point is where you say and. Remember when we were working with our place value chart, we made sure that we saved and we didn't use it when we said 101. We just said 101. Because when you put that decimal in there, that's what says and. So this is 101. This is 101. So that decimal is where you get to say and now. We finally made it to the point where we can say and when there's a decimal. You can use models to represent decimals. 1 whole. Here's a 1 whole. We're using our base 10 blocks. We have 1 square, and it's 1 whole piece. 1/10, we have a square cut into 10 pieces, and we just colored in 1. This would be the same as this. And then 1/100th, we have our base 10 block cut into 100 pieces, and we've colored 1 in. So it'd be 1/100th. Try it. Complete the place value chart that represents the fraction of the grid that is shaded at the right. So there are how many squares shaded out of this whole square? Well, there's each of these rows is 10. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 1, 2. So there are 42 squares shaded out of this whole square, which is 100 squares. In words, this is 42 hundredths, or 42 out of 100, because there are 100 pieces total, and there are 42 colored in. 42 would be our numerator. 100th would be our denominator. This is the same as 4/10ths and 2/100ths, because there are 4 10 blocks colored in, or 10 columns colored in, and then there are 2 ones. So you could show it this way or this way. So write 4/10ths and 2/100ths in the place value chart. There are 0 whole grids. There are 4/10ths and 2/100ths. Let's practice it. Write the decimal represented by each model. Well, I don't see any holes, so I know in my ones place there's going to be a 0, and then I'm going to put my decimal. I always start with my ones and then put my decimal. Now, how many pieces is our square cut into? 10, and there are 3 tenths colored in, so I'm going to put a 3 in the tenths place. and there are 0 ones colored in. So the decimal represented by each model is 3/10, or 3/10, or 3 out of 10. But we need it in decimal form. Now for this one, there are 0 ones. Don't forget your decimal point. Then there are 0/10 that I see. But if you notice, there are 10s colored in a different way. This is a whole 10. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is 60. 1, 2, 3, 63. Well, this is my tenths and this is my hundredths, so 63. All right, we've already done the modeling of tenths, so lesson 2 should be super easy. It's just a different way to think about it without using models, all right? Example 1. Lorena and Rebecca went to 10 horseback riding lessons. 3 of the lessons were outside of the barn. What decimal represents the part of the horseback riding lessons that were spent outside? So there were 10 horseback riding lessons. 3 out of the 10 lessons were spent outside. 3 out of 10 equal parts means 3/10. So using a model, I would draw a base 10 block and divide it into 10 pieces, and then I would color in 3. Then using a place value chart, you would write a 3 in the tenths place. There are 0 whole grids, and there are 0 1/100ths colored in, but there are 3/10 shaded. So 3/10 of the horseback riding lessons were outside, or 0.3. Example 2. A campground has 10 campsites. Each of the campsites have campers. The rest are empty. 8 of the campsites have campers. The rest are empty. What part of the campground is empty? Write a decimal. Use a number line. If blank out of the 10 campsites have campers, so what did our story tell us? 8. Then blank of the 10 campers do not have campers. Well, 8 plus some number gives me 10. So 2 of the 10 campsites do not have campers. The number line is divided from 0 to 1 and 10 equal parts. So 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, and so on. And we're going to put a dot where 2/10 would be. So 2 out of 10 equal parts is 2/10, or 0.2. So 0.2 of the campground is empty, so 2/10. Example 3, use words to describe 7/10. The 7 is in the tens place, so 0.7 is 7/10. 7/10 means 7 out of the 10 equal parts. So 0.7 can be described as 7 out of 10. Guided practice, shade the model, then write the decimal. 4 out of 10. So we have our base 10 block, and it's divided into 10 pieces. If I were to write this in a fraction, I would have 4 out of 10. I know my denominator tells me how many pieces there are total, which they already have for us. And the numerator tells us how many pieces I color in, so I need to color in 4. Now, if I wrote this as a decimal, I don't have any holes. I need my decimal, and then I have 4/10 colored in. Number 2, 8/10. This as a fraction would be 8/10. My denominator is done. They have already divided our base 10 block into 10s for us, and I need to color in 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 0 holes and then 8 in my tenths place because I have 8/10. Moving on to my hundredths. Again, since we've modeled this should be super quick and easy, just like our tens. Math in My World, example 1. What kind of star was that? That was not very good, Miss Volk. Let's try again. There we go. Drew has a 100-piece puzzle. There are 4 corner pieces in the puzzle. What decimal represents the part of the puzzle that is a corner piece? So 4 out of 100 puzzle pieces are corner pieces. If I wrote it in a fraction, it would be 4 out of 100. Use a model. Shade 4 out of the 100 parts. My denominator tells me how many pieces there are total, which they've already divided it for us. And then my numerator tells me how many pieces I color in. So let's color in 4. And we always color vertically or up and down. Okay? 2, use a place value chart. Write 4 in the hundredth and write 4 hundredths in the place value chart. There are 0 whole grids, so we put a 0 in the ones place. There are 4 hundredths shaded. There are no tenths, but there are 4 hundredths. Read this decimal as 4 hundredths. So 4 hundredths of the puzzle pieces are corner pieces. Example 2. It rained 13 out of the past 100 days. What part of the days did it rain? Write it as a decimal. So first, use a model. The model shows 13 parts out of 100 that are shaded. Again, you can write it as a fraction to help you. Okay, it's already divided into 100 pieces, and we color in 13 because that's our numerator. The model shows 13 out of 100. 13 out of 100 equal parts is 13 hundredths, or 0.13. I got this because you can use a place value chart. There are 0 whole grids shaded. 13 hundredths is 1/10 and 3 hundredths. There's 1 whole tenth and then 3 ones, which is the hundredths pieces. So it rained 13 hundredths of the days. Guided practice, write each decimal. All right, there are 0 whole grids. There are no blocks of 10 colored in, and there are 2 out of 100 colored in. For number 2, there are 0 whole grids colored in. I see 2 whole columns, which are my 10, so 2 tenths, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hundredths, so this would be read as 25 hundredths. All right, I'm going to review just a couple of the independent practices, probably one of each type of question, just so we understand just so we make sure we really understand what we are doing. So for 3, 4, 5, and 6, our directions are shade the model, then write the decimal. This is exactly like we just practiced. 1 out of 10. I could write that as a fraction if I need some help. 1/10. My denominator tells me how many pieces there are total, which they've already cut it into 10 pieces for us. My numerator tells me how many to color in, so I color in 1. Now, if I was writing this as a decimal, there are 0 whole pieces, and there is 1/10 piece colored in, so 1/10. Come down here for 7 and 8. Write each of the following as a decimal, then graph each point on the same number line. 6 out of 10 equal parts. So 6 tenths, which would be shown as a decimal. There are 0 wholes and 6 tenths, a 6 in the tenths place. So I would come over here and graph 6 tenths. 9, 10, 11, and 12 say use words to describe each decimal. This one has a 2 in the tenths place, so it is 2 tenths. Or another way you could write it is 2 out of 10. You could write it either way. I would accept either way for this. This independent practice was all about tenths. This one was all about hundredths. So let's go over a couple of these as well. Write each decimal. All right, let's do 5 for this one. Okay? There are 0 holes. I see lots of whole columns colored in, not whole squares, but whole columns. And each column is a 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4 in my 10th place. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in my 100th place. So this would be 48 hundredths. All right, because I would write it like this, which we know in expanded form would be 40 plus 8. So 40 in the 10th, or 4 in the 10th place and 8 in the ones place, so it would be 48 hundredths. 9, 10, and 11, 12 say write a decimal for each part of the dollar shown. All right, so this is where we got to use some money skills here. We have, for number 9, 1, 2, 3, 4 dimes. All right, we don't have a whole dollar, so we have a 0 in the ones place. We have 4 dimes, which is equal to 4 tenths, because I would need 10 tens to make a dollar. So we have 4 out of 10, so 4 tenths. And then I have 2 pennies, which are equal to 1. So those would be in the hundredths place, because I would need 100 pennies to make a dollar. So I would have a 2 in the hundredths place. So 42 hundredths. In cents, it would be 42 cents, which would be 42 out of 100 to make a whole dollar. So we should have that written down for 9. I will post the answer key for the rest of the problems, and then go ahead and do the homework. They're just quick pages reviewing lessons 2 and 3. I didn't give you homework over lesson 1. And then I will post the answer key to that under tomorrow's module. So you'll have to wait a little bit and attempt the homework. Give it your best shot before checking the answer key for that. And then I will see you tomorrow for our next lessons.